All righty, we're going to roll right into the next thing. Hey, Justin Timberlake, he's nice, I assume. The next panel, people panel. So this is focused on what keeps a lot of agency owners awake at night, culture, building a culture that is engaging, leading by example, having great people. So it's going to be chaired by Catherine Morgan, leadership coach. I don't know you well enough to make a rum joke, but maybe another time. So excited to hear from her. So if you can help also welcome Peter from Barrel, Mac from Helix, Leah from Arq Design, and apparently Isaac Newton from Pattern. Let's give them a round of applause as they come up on stage.
All right. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Catherine Morgan. I am a leadership coach. I have my own business, and I, too, had the good fortune of meeting randomly Rachel, and have been working with the e-commerce folks and doing masterminds on a monthly basis on sort of the art of leadership. So one of the things I also do is called positive intelligence, which is leading from the right side of your brain, where you're more empathetic and creative. And we also did an exercise on finding out when you're in your saboteur mode, which is where you get in your own way, and finding out what that is. So I'd like to start today with an exercise to get us into our right mind, and that's called square breathing. So just bear with me. We'll do this 4 times. We're going to inhale for 4 seconds. We're going to hold it. Then we're going to, for 4 seconds, we're going to let go for 4 seconds, and then we're going to stay empty for 4 seconds. We'll do that 4 times. Ready? I need this too, so we can all calm down. Here we go. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Empty. Inhale. Hold. Empty. Sorry, that was exhale. Empty. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Empty. Here we are. All right. Well, I would now like to have my lovely panelists here introduce themselves, maybe name, company, your status in your company, and a little bit about what your company does. We'll start with you, Peter.
Yeah, well, thank you for the exercise, Catherine. That was very refreshing. Yeah, so my name is Peter Kang, co-founder, CEO of Barrel. We're a digital agency, been around a long time, been doing this for 17 years. Mostly building Shopify websites and yeah, helping brands try to get their shops online.
My name is Leah. I am the creative director of Arq Design Studio here in Toronto. We work specifically with women-owned supplement brands who are category breaking in their formulations or materials, and we help them tell better stories online. That's the name.
Cool. I'm Mac. Can you hear me? Yeah, it's working? Okay. I'm Mac King from Helix. I'm the managing director and partner of the agency, and more recently, part owner of an agency called AbleSense. We're an e-commerce agency, build websites on Shopify.
And I'm Isaac Newton, that's my real name. I'm the co-founder of Pattern. We are a digital design and e-commerce agency, and what we say is we like to help brands really succeed in the experience economy. And we're based in San Francisco, or in the Bay Area.
So we've got 2 Canadians and 2 Americans. Very fair. Okay, I thought I'd start by finding out what does ChatGPT have to say about leadership? And this is the definition. A leader is an individual who guides, influences, and inspires others towards a common goal or vision. Leadership involves the ability to take charge, make decisions, and effectively communicate and coordinate with a group of people to achieve desired outcomes. Now, as you know, if you've ever tried this, this could go on and on and on. but I thought I'd stop it there. And though that's the definition, the way we actually execute on our leadership is different because we all have a different personality. So what I'd like to ask the panelists first is maybe a sentence or words that would describe your leadership style. So I'm going to go from Isaac this way this time.
Leadership style, I'd say engaged and interested, and trying to lead with empathy.
Yeah, that's a good one. I would say like relationship-based and based on a foundation of trust.
Okay.
I would say I try and find everyone's unique strengths and then synergize them towards the same common goal.
Definitely trying to be leading more by example. So high energy, positivity, and consistency, bringing kind of integrity every day to work.
And truly, as a leader, you really do have to emulate what you want from your people, right? You can't act one way and expect a different outcome. Somebody said this morning, and I say this all the time, what got you here won't get you there. So you have to be aware of the things that you're doing and the impact you have on the people around you, because it really matters. So we had little chats before this, just, well, very brief, I might add. So I don't have in-depth knowledge, but we did have a conversation. And each of these folks have had different experiences in their organization. So I kind of have, I'm going to call it random. I'm going to start with Leah, if you don't mind. So Leah is an entrepreneur. And she has had several different careers or work experiences in rather large organizations. And now you are the owner of your own agency. So the question here is, as an entrepreneur, can you share with us some of what you have learned, why you chose this path, and more specifically, why you're working with women?
Yeah, so why women specifically? I, very strangely enough, come from a background of synchronized swimming, which is very bizarre. But I was, for 14 years, entrenched in the environment of literally having people move together down to the fraction of a millisecond and really kind of creating a pack mind to get towards the same performance goal. And so when I got into the corporate world, I kind of very quickly realized every corporation that I worked for, their teams did not have the same motivations or drivers, and so their leaders had, to put it bluntly, kind of lost the plot. And I feel like I was a millennial who had the curse of, I want to feel impact. And what does that actually mean? But what it meant to me was to work in the same team where we were all trying to achieve the same mission and have it feel good and put your head to the pillow at night and feel like you made an impact in a way that felt valuable to culture or a company's outcome or whatever that was. And what I saw was a lot of employees or managers were either motivated by money, which is not in of itself bad, but when you have other people who are motivated by values or sustainability, you don't often get to the results that you all want to, and it leads to poor teams and poor outcomes of projects. So I decided to take my learnings from that very niche sports world and create my own environment where I could actually basically cultivate that sort of like mission-driven sort of environment for women in particular, because I know that they need a little bit of a different touch than men-led environments. So,
thank you. Okay, so hands up. Who here has had a bad leader or manager in their life? It really impacts you, right? Yeah. It can take you down, and it really makes it hard to go to work in the day. So, well done on making that change. All right, I got Mac next. All right.
What's up?
So your agency has gone through a hyper-growth phase, and which included a lot of leadership changes, inevitably. Can you give an overview of how your leadership team has changed as you've scaled, and what were some of the strategies that went into that change?
Totally, yeah. Yeah, we've updated, so I'm not the founding partner of Helix. I joined the agency in January of 2019 as the second partner. At the time we were, somewhat modest in size. I think we just done like a 1.5 million in revenue. And since then we've grown quite a bit in the last 4 years. But the strategy that we took was to add on new partners. So we now have 5 partners in the agency as a means to like help grow the company. And I think it's really been, you know, I was thinking of what would be really relevant for this room. I think it's been a real reason as to why we've been able to grow as fast as we have. And something I really encourage solo founders to do of agency world, you know, like it's difficult running an agency and knowing like the business side, the technical side, the operational side, the creative side, you know, all very different skill sets. So the approach that we took was to bring on partners to own individual product lines within the agency. So when I started, I took over the revenue side of the company, which is what I continue to own: partnerships, marketing, and sales for Half Helix. And then we brought on 3 other partners to own the engineering, the creative work, and also our project management or operational work. I think that's really been like, a secret sauce. And most recently, we actually acquired a new agency called AbleSense. They're also a Shopify partner. And it was a solo founder who was looking to get out. And I think one of the things that he remarked when he got in and saw under the hood of what we're doing at Half Helix is like, I should have done this. I think, well, he built something really special and great and a really talented team. Ultimately, he decided to sell. And I think, he really said explicitly he wished he brought on other partners. And so I encourage people to really think about that critically for your teams.
I was going to say, like, a lot of times, like, we think we have an idea and, obviously you can be really smart, but just having a perspective from someone else just adds this flavor to your thinking, and, you can really grow that way. Now, question, did you consider personalities when you were bringing these, or skill sets when you were bringing these folks on?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a big decision, right? Bringing on a partner. And I think we got lucky, which is like, it could go very wrong, and it hasn't. We have 5 partners now at the agency, and we get along quite well. We operate like a Greek democracy. But it can be challenging for sure. I think like we led with skill. So, our engineering director took over the reins from my original founder, Peter, just because he's much more technical, and we had some, familiarity with him, met him at some events. He actually came from Barrel, so sorry, Peter, but, and then most recently we brought in a creative director who's really kind of rounded out our offering. And so we also knew him through some industry connections. So a combination of skill plus the right temperament and cultural style, yeah.
I'd suggest people knowing their limits is also really important. So if this technical fellow that you said was originally the technical person and allowed someone else that was more technical to take over, that's kind of a gift in itself, to be self-aware and say this person knows more and can bring the business to another place that I can't. So, all right, I've got Isaac up next. So you share your leadership role. And you have a specific skill set that you bring to the table. So I was wondering, how do you stay on top of learning? And can you comment on the path you take to grow as a leader?
There's a lot there. Yeah, so I share my role. I basically, my partner, his role is really leading the design team, the creative team, and the creative design and strategy team. My role is more operational, business development, marketing, partnerships, and it's been a journey. We're 5 years old. We just turned 5 this year. We are small by design. We have made a point not to grow too quickly. He and I both worked together at a much larger agency that was full service, and when we started Pattern, we put a lot, at least around 3 months, just really focusing on what we wanted to create, what our values were, what we were looking to do to differentiate ourselves in the market, and more importantly, or equally important, is what we did not want to do, and what we wanted to, I don't want to say learn from mistakes or learn from what other agencies did where we'd worked that just wasn't going to be right for us, but and that helped us really create a vision, a very clear vision of what we want to do in terms of the culture, the type of work, the types of clients, and the technology stacks, Shopify, and some others as well. But with that in mind, I think we've shared our roles and responsibilities, and it's been, for the first few years, I kind of took more of a backseat approach in that, since he was the creative, he was leading a lot of the design and leading the team. But more recently, in the last year and a half, 2 years, I've really made it a point to participate more and be really involved in what we do and how we communicate what we do with our prospects and clients. And it's been great. We've really been, again, growing the team very slowly. We've also, part of our model is to hire very seasoned freelancers. We call them permalancers, or people who allows us to just really scale up and scale down. And then we have a core team of around 10. And with that, in terms of how the team works and collaborates, this is really tight-knit. We're like a family, thankfully. It's been great.
I'm going to share a secret, though. I think you also said that you have a coach.
Best thing ever, people. Cannot recommend it enough. I started working with a coach around a year ago, and I wish I would have done it years ago. It's been absolutely, I wouldn't be on this stage had I, there's just so many things that I'm doing differently, and just how I'm approaching what I do in terms of taking risks, in terms of how I communicate, in terms of, I think one of the most important things that I've learned from working with this coach is the energy and how to approach challenges and what you bring into every conversation. So I'm more mindful than ever about how I am communicating to people. And it's been an incredible process. And also just taking risks and not letting the little,
saboteurs.
The saboteurs, gosh, they're terrible. So I encourage all of you, if you have that opportunity, find a great coach. And yeah, it's a huge opportunity to grow.
There's a saying in the coaching world, it's the language of change is change the language. And it really does impact the way people receive a message versus the way you might initially. And that has to be something that you need to be really mindful of, is your words.
Yeah.
So, Peter, leading by example, I think we started with that. And as a leader in your organization, you have provided your personal perspective through a monthly blog series called Agency Journey. I think Mac knew about it too when we were talking about that. So what do you write about? What does it do for you? And how does it impact the way you lead your agency?
Yeah, so I started Agency Journey, it's come up on 3 years. And when I first began writing, so I keep a blog, very old school. I never even thought about it from a personal branding standpoint. I mean, Nigel's stuff was awesome. But I think, it was more to just put my thoughts and put it out there. And, over the years, I've been writing about agency stuff every now and then. I would put out, for example, hey, this is how we calculate profits on projects at Barrel. So I would share a spreadsheet, and people would be like, oh, this is helpful. But over time, I thought, hey, what if I made a blog series where I could talk about the ups and downs of running an agency business. And one of the things I really wanted to be strict on was no sugarcoating. Good, bad, just write it and put it out there. Obviously, going to be sensitive to certain things around employees and clients and things like that. But in general, the stuff that mattered, I wanted to be very straight with the audience on. And so it's basically 3 sections. I don't deviate from the structure. It's basically a highlight section where I talk about, hey, how are things going on the new business side? Any kind of launches we might have had, any kind of stuff that's happened on the team side. Did we hire some new folks, or did we lose people? Things like that. And then, just reflecting on those, hey, what was going through my mind? Or was it because of decisions that I made prior that might have kind of made us end up here. And then I have a section called Top of Mind, which is one kind of burning topic that I could go way more in depth into. So that's kind of the meat of the blog post is, some months it might be hey, what's what are we really doing about sales? What can we do better? Are we doing all that we can to get the most opportunities and the best kind of opportunities? Other times might be more around culture and like process. So yeah, it's just space to really put my thoughts down, be organized, reflect, and then just put it out there for folks. The last section, which I love, is like it's a series of quotes that I curate from books I've read in the past. So I use an app called Readwise. Anyone familiar with Readwise? Okay, I had a couple of folks who. It's awesome. What it does is it pulls all the highlights from your Kindle app into it, and then every day you get you could pick the number of quotes that come at you in the app every day. So I do 7 quotes a day. So every morning I'll get 7 quotes that come up, and then some of these are from books I've read maybe 10 years ago. So I'll be like, oh, cool, I remember that quote. And then what I do then is copy that, and then I share it in a group chat with my Barrel partners. And then I'll tag it quote alert. And then so at the end of every month, I'll aggregate those, put that in my blog post, put my thoughts on it, and that becomes content. But more than anything, that helps me resurface a lot of themes around communication, leadership, all these themes that I knew were important. I read it years ago, might have forgotten them, but now they've resurfaced. And then now I can share it with folks who come and check out the blog posts. So yeah, I mean, the number one thing with this has been the commitment to like just never missing it. And I appreciate Nigel talking about like posting stuff every single day. Just every month. Got 2 young kids, and it's like sometimes I'm like, oh my God, how am I gonna get this written this weekend? Usually, I try to create an outline throughout the month, and then the last weekend of the month, I lock myself in a room for like a good 2 hours, and then I just go, I gotta pump this out. And yeah, it's worked out so far. And yeah, it's been, more than anything, it's been a great way to just organize my thoughts. And there's also a, because I'm not like sugarcoating anything, like, my employees, when they look at it, it's not like, hey, look at the way he's talking about it that one way, and then it's like this another internally. No, it's like I feel comfortable. I'll be like, hey, blah, 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 we were talking about this. Oh yeah, by the way, check out the blog post. I had some additional thoughts if you want to just read it. So I don't feel like I need to hide or kind of alter language. And like I said, language is important. And I try to have that sort of consistency and integrity in like how I portray what's going on, and then also how we behave internally. So in that way, I think, and hopefully that is a form of leadership that folks can appreciate within the.
Yeah, I mean, when we knew we were on the panel together, I did mention, I was like, I really admire, Peter, the way that you commit to like putting yourself out there and creating content. I think as leaders, sometimes that can take a back seat, like you really have to carve out the time to put yourself out there. And I think, like I was chatting with a couple other agency owners before we got on the panel too, and they all knew your stuff. So I think, you've done a really good job at getting out there in front of this audience and releasing some like helpful tidbits,
Absolutely.
Like, over the
I've
years,
heard of,
for sure.
That
I think you're gonna
spreadsheet I've seen, it's amazing. Like,
I think you're going to have a lot of new subscribers. Also, I think there's a real humility to it, right? It shows that leaders don't, first of all, have all the answers. And that's a big mistake. I think a lot of people think just because you're leading, you can ask your folks for their thoughts.
Yep.
And, there's transparency in that. And I think people are more attached to you when they know what you're thinking. And so that's what you've given them. Okay, so I'm going to say whoever wants to grab this, we can start just some questions out here. I always think it's very interesting for leaders that you also need to get feedback. Everybody talks about performance reviews for their people, and that's like managing down. But what about, how do you give your boss, or how you as a boss, how do you get feedback? So, who wants to start? I'm asking. Yeah.
I can start. So something that we had to implement right away that I've taken from my sports background is consistent, normalized criticism every day, all the time. So when you think about teams who are in a performance sport and their coach is just constantly yelling correction, 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 it doesn't become an internalized like thing of, oh, I'm wrong, I did this wrong. It just becomes part of the process and like leading by 1% better every time you perform or every time you do your job. But the only way to make that normalized is if you also receive that back. And how many times as a leader have you yourself actually been the cause of a bad situation or a roadblock, or you are like creating like an issue, and you don't actually like outwardly put in that like openness to receive that feedback, and you're just like wondering like, who can tell me what I'm doing wrong? And so if you're feeling that way, it's because you haven't normalized that feedback loop that comes back to yourself.
Language is important in the feedback too.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to chime in on that?
You know, I especially, so it's hard to get sometimes like honest feedback from, you know, just upward feedback is really hard to get.
True.
And so, you know, I do like to leverage like anonymous feedback forms because then sometimes the truth really comes out. And so, you know, one of the things that we do is a quarterly town hall where we do ask teams to submit tough questions that we'll answer in front of the team. And like, some of the questions are like super challenging,
okay.
but like we do make a commitment because we're like, look, like let's whatever comes out of here is gonna surface the gaps that we have. Maybe like, you know, the question might be aggressively worded or, you know, kind of has a little edge to it, but like it's like, hey, that's just a signal. It's a form of feedback because there's something there's a disconnect between how leadership might be, you know, communicating and seeing things versus what the team is saying.
Absolutely.
So that's the mindset, because I think in the past, like when, you know, we used to be a lot more defensive as a leadership team. Like any kind of, you know, questioning of anything would be seen as an attack on our abilities. But you know, over time, it's like, hey, just feedback is information, and once you kind of see it as that, you can be a lot more productive. And so we go, hey, the harder the questions or whatever the comments might be, you know, there's grains of truth in there, number one, and then there's two, like opportunities to fill the gap. And you know, one other place is Glassdoor. I mean, you know, you're only going to get really good ones or really awful reviews on Glassdoor, and you know, when the really awful ones come, you know, that used to like ruin a whole week for me a long time ago. But like now I'm like, all right, cool. Like let's unpack it. So we'll go line by line. We go, oh, like okay, this is why you know, that must be said, or this is actually a good point. Like we got to do a better job of communicating stuff there. So you know, it just helps to build that muscle, and you know, it becomes a lot less emotional and a lot more productive.
The Glassdoor reviews are pretty telling though, because that tells your organization that issues have been festering for a while, and that's the only way that they can release that feedback. And so that also just comes back to the consistency factor of how many of your routines or rituals you have with your team are actually just performative. So everyone feels like they're making an impact day to day, instead of being that verbal feedback loop of I'm blocked on this, or I need help here, or I actually don't know what I'm doing, so that you can unblock people and like deal with those issues as they come before it gets to that phase of this is the only place I have to give this feedback for me to be heard, essentially.
Yeah, that means no one's listening.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, agreed. Okay, I think we've got a time frame here, but I do have a question for these two gentlemen, Mac and Isaac. How do you keep your teams engaged and retain talent? We've just, yeah.
A quick rapid fire, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we try and create a team first mentality for the agency. Try and create an agency where people can build a career around, which I think like some agencies, you know, there's like this, some theory of like, it's a stepping stone, right? You go agency, then you go somewhere else after. And we're trying to do something differently at Half Helix and create an environment that people want to stay at, which means like listening to employees, creating the right work environment, giving flexible time off, good benefits. Yeah.
Ditto. I mean, and seriously, we do a lot of the same things, and thankfully, we've not had an issue with retention, and the 2 times that that's happened, people have circled back. So that says a lot
Only
about
2?
what we.
That's amazing.
Thankfully. That says, I think, a lot about what we've created at Pattern.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I think leadership is a constant journey. We constantly have to tweak ourselves and be self-aware. It requires empathy, humility, and the ability to see yourself for how you're impacting others. So I want to thank you for sharing your stories today. And Anyway, I'm around. I know there's a few people that wanted to talk to me, and I will be here all day. There were some people in the Avengers, and I just wanted to say that I'm happy to have some chats with folks. Can I do that plug? All right, thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, panel. All right, quick reminder, if you want to go to the delivery workshop with Mike from Irish Titan, that's happening in the Horseshoe area. I don't know where exactly, but there's a lot of windows, so you'll be able to see them. You'll find them in the Horseshoe.